Millennials, boomers, Gen Zers. Oh my. How do we bridge the perceived gap between the generations in the workplace? I'm Milan, and today we're going to talk about a couple of different ways that we can bridge the gap between the generational perceptions in the workplace. And are we really different than we believe we are? In my 30 years of growing my career to senior level, I think we've seen both sides, I know I have, of the equation. When I started out, I was the Gen Zer of the day, looking at the boomers, and I'm not even sure what they called boomers before boomers. And I was that person then. And then now I'm on the other side of that scale. And do I perceive a difference, and how do we deal with that? So today we're going to talk about two ways to deal with perceived generational disconnects and how to approach it to make the workplace better for everyone and help each other out. And then we'll have a pro tip at the end of a very specific thing that I know I do in the new COVID world that's been working really well. So let's talk a little bit about the perceived disconnects. When I talk about perceived disconnects, I don't think there is a disconnect between the generations, actually. The way I look at it is really, they're not different, but they're just at a different stage of their life. And this is what I mean. You have what I call the 4 seasons of a career. A career can be 49 years if you start at 18 and go to 67. But really, when you talk about the spring of someone's career, when they're right out of college or high school getting their first job, that has a whole different set of motivators and drivers at that stage of your life than you do when you're, as in my case, winter is coming, or is it here already? But either way, it's different. The things that drive and motivate me now are different than what the Gen Zers are facing today. But I think we've all kind of faced a lot of those same issues, because I know, like for me, when I came out of college, I was a second lieutenant in the Air Force, stationed in Northern California. I wasn't buying a house anytime soon in that environment. It doesn't matter what the housing prices were. But I see a lot of that same issue today with the younger generations. You know, the housing prices have gone up, interest rates are going up, you know, salaries can get stalled. It was kind of the same type of issue. Now, might have been weighted a little bit differently based on where you lived and what your job was, but it was the same type of thought. Just like when you're starting out after college and you're in the spring and moving into your summer, where you're starting to think about kids and starting a family and settling down. Well, that stage of life drives a set of perceptions and actions which are different than the ones that motivate me and other probably senior people generally today, because we're not at the same stage of life. And so that's, I think, one of the drivers of this perception is the fact that we look at it in terms of what years you were born, when really, I think most people go through life through a semi-standard way, the types of things they want at different stages of their career. And so when we don't piece those together and understand them, then we're going to have issues. The other issue that I really think is manifesting and causing more issues is the media. I mean, I can tell you, when my Gen X self was coming up, we didn't have YouTube and TikTok to go see about all the new trends and things like quiet quitting. The media can drive a frenzy, as we know, because that's what media does. So I think that the instant access to media and all of these different ideas and what constitutes a viral action can be problematic when it comes to understanding generations. Like, here's the big ones: the quiet quitting or acting your wage, whatever one you want to use. That was no different than when I was starting out. We called it active disengagement. You know, it's the same idea, but it was never quite as prevalent in terms of the media and getting all the attention. So I think the media has been another reason why there's these perceived disconnects. Now, clearly, you know, I'm an 80s Gen Xer, so I'm gonna like some of the hair bands and some of the music of the 80s. And some of that stuff I think is kind of relevant. But when it comes to, do we have workplace issues? I think a lot of it is this misperception around people are going through different things that I know, for us, being the older generation, we've gone through as well. So how do you deal with that? I think the first thing is we really have to open up lines of communication between the different generations. That is hard today. It's especially hard when we're in this still semi-COVID world where there's a lot more remote work. I'm going to speak to that a little bit because it's very important. because unless you're going back to the office full time, it's really hard to engage on a level to learn the other generations, because you don't spend a lot of time with them like you would in a normal office. Hey, we're going to go to lunch, or we're going to have a book club, or we used to have an investment club once a month. People from all generations would get together. You learn about each other. So the number one tool that I tell people you have to use is you have to get engaged. You have to be actively engaged with different people as an individual to really learn what stage of life they're in and how you can help them, because it is going to be different. So if you're always at odds with these life stages, it's going to be a very challenging space in the workplace to then meet eye to eye on expectations, as those will bleed over into career expectations as well. So that's number one. And then number two is a little harder, is take all the media with a grain of salt. I mean, all of these things that are going on in the media today, it's really challenging to go and not look at that and say, oh, well, all of these people and 100 million views on Quiet Quit. Well, again, I think a lot of these concepts, you would be told that they're pretty standard. They haven't really changed over time. So I would say number two is you really need to tone down what's happening on the YouTubes or the TikToks, and take it with a grain of salt. So those are really the two general ways that I know we've been talking about, kind of bridging the gap of understanding. And then the pro tip and bonus tip is go one-on-one individual, because at the end of the day, it comes down to what an individual wants and needs. And that means making a specific one-on-one effort to really understand that person and what they want to go through. Now, today, that can come down to Slack, and an extra bonus tip is I always check, when there's somebody that I haven't talked to in a while, I'll go check their calendar. Oh, there's no meeting right now on their calendar. Then I'll go look at Slack. Oh, they're available. I'll give them a ping, and I'll say, hey, can you jump on Slack? Can you jump on Zoom or whatever calling thing you use for a while? And let's just chat a little bit about where you're at, what's going on with you. Because you really have to do that in order to understand the differences between not only individuals, but generations. So those are just some ways that we go through this generational disconnect and realize that we're really not all that different. So in summary, it's really not about the differences of generations. It's about where they're at in their life stages, which then drives a lot of the generational stereotypes that are out there. Love to hear what you have in the comments below. Love to open a dialogue. And if you really found this valuable, you can always hear more topics by subscribing and hitting the bell. Thank you.